Welcome to session 2 of our videos all about the vision refresh process here at Cascade Fellowship. So today I'm really excited to further our discussion by talking with Larry Doornbos. We're going to interview him and just hear his take on the church, broadly speaking, and then focus in on the very practical parts of what comes next. To bring that into some context for you, and by way of quick review, what we talked about in session 1, we said our work here at the church was with this goal of creating a vision pyramid. And so there are certain foundational commitments we have that never ever change. Specifically that this is the Word of God. The Bible is infallible, is inerrant, and it guides all that we do. It guides our life, it guides our doctrine, it guides our practice. And we have a particular way of reading the Bible that we're committed to, and we have to articulate in our creeds and confessions. On top of that, the next layer of our vision pyramid are our core values. We did the archaeological work of digging up and discovering what makes this church unique, the culture here. And we said that, listen, everything else we do on top has to be in alignment with that value system, with that culture, because culture eats mission and vision for breakfast, one of my mentors loves to say. So what we have to do is act in accordance with our values. We're very blessed, by the way, I should say, because here at the church, we have tremendous values, like the value of hospitality. That's a value that not a lot of churches have today, unfortunately, but it is part of our DNA, and we can build on that, and we will build on that. What are we building on our values? We're building mission and vision. Last week we said, hey, remember our mission statement? It's really simple. I hope you've begun to memorize it. It's radiating the love and truth of Jesus in every area of life. Balancing love and truth and just radiating it out like a bright light shining into the world. Our vision for how we do that, how we accomplish that mission God has given us, it's about those 3 verbs: welcome, equip, and inspire. We're welcoming people into this loving community, again, that makes us totally unique, the amount of love and hospitality and friendliness here. Once they're in, we're equipping them with the never-changing truth of God, and then we're inspiring them to do something with it, to live it out in an ever-changing world. That's the mission and that's the vision. Now we've made it to the very tip top of the pyramid. This week we're going to focus on priorities and practices. Last time we were together, I gave you just a brief preview into this, but today we're really going to flesh it out. And the goal of today is to bring the core values into operation in our day-to-day practice of ministry, to bring our mission and vision into practice in the day-to-day doing of our ministry. And to talk about how we're going to do that, I sat down with our consultant, Larry Doornbos. So joining us now in the podcast studio, it's Larry Doornbos, our church consultant who's done such a good job with the Vision Refresh. Larry, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about the consulting work that you do and your approach to consulting.
Yeah, so Larry Doornbos, pastor in the Christian Reformed Church, and I work for Church Leadership Center and also for the Center for Church Renewal. And we work with all kinds of different churches in all kinds of different places. And as we do that, one of our key pieces is the piece of listening. And so what we want to do is we want to listen to the voice of God, listen to the voice of the congregation, and listen to the voice of the leadership. And that's so important to us because we believe that listening is a pathway into making good decisions, and hearing many voices helps us shape and mold the mission that God has for our church. And so we make sure that that's an essential part of what we do together, is that listening. And we did a lot of listening during our time together. We also listened to the voice of the community through something called Mission Insight and discovered some intriguing things about the people who live around the church here, the way that we can reach out to them. We listened to people through a survey they did, and then the congregation came together and talked about that. We had leadership meetings, staff gatherings, all kinds of ways of listening that finally led to the place where we have the mission and vision and the important things we need to do next on our docket.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that approach, and I think our church as a whole really appreciated that approach. That rather than come in from the outside and as a consultant, an expert, you just place on us the correct mission, but really you drew out of us what makes our church unique, and as you referenced, what makes our community unique. So in this particular time, in this particular place, with this particular group of people, what is God uniquely calling us to do? And I think, as you saw in video 1, I think we've really landed on something that's specific to us and a good fit for us.
I think so too. And it was really exciting to see how that all came together through conversation and, how we always do with taking words and putting them together and finding some new ways to think about things. And actually, I think the other part that I'm really excited about is it's unique in a context of words that some people might not expect. Mm-hmm. And so it catches your attention. You stop and say, wait a minute, radiating. That's an interesting word. And love and truth. And so I really love the way it all comes together around this particular community, and also that necessity of being able to radiate that love and truth of Christ into the world, and in a context which is, of all the churches I've worked with, a unique context that this church is sitting in, and really some unique opportunities that it has to reach out into a community and not only influence the community, but because the folks that are here, the ability to influence a wide swath of the world.
Oh, absolutely. And that's going to be a whole separate video. We've got an entire video devoted to the mission insight data and what we've learned about the folks who live within a 5-mile radius of this church, how we can reach them, and like you said, how we can actually change the world just by influencing the influencers. We've got a lot of influencers in our orbit, and that's a stewardship.
It is.
To take seriously, to serve them well as they serve other people well. So look forward to that video later on in the series. I wonder, though, if you have any other big picture thoughts after doing all of this listening, after hearing all that our groups have said and the survey results have said. What's your, especially comparing us to other churches you've worked with, what's your take on our church?
So let me say, first of all, it's a gift to work with Cascade. It has just been so much fun and so delightful. And what an amazing group of people you have here, both as thought leaders and thoughtful people. So that's the first thing I'd want to say. The other thing that I'd really want to say is that this is a church where people are excited to be here, pleased with the ministry, pleased with leadership, and imagining a very healthy and fulfilled future. And so often in our culture today, churches are on the decline and they're struggling and those kind of things. And here at Cascade, again, just like the unique situation we find ourselves in with the people around us, the church itself is somewhat unique in that it has just a very positive attitude and a very hopeful attitude towards the future.
Yeah, there's a lot to love here, a lot of strengths in this church. And I think maybe one of our strengths is that we chose voluntarily to say, hey, we're in a pretty good place, but still, let's make the investment to bring you in and to look and sharpen up our vision and to really take that step. Because a lot of churches may not reach out to you until they are pretty far down in decline, and it's hard, if not impossible, to resurrect them back where they need to be.
As a matter of fact, just this past weekend, I used Cascade as an example of a church that was at the adult stage of the life cycle. And usually we're in the adult stage, everything's going really well. You're excited about the ministry. People are all pumped up. And churches often just say, oh, this is so wonderful. We're just going to sit here. But if you move out of that adult stage into the other side called maturity, you begin on the downward slope. And so churches at the adult stage, if they're wise, stop and say, what do we need to do right now? And I was talking to the church this past weekend, and I said, I've got this church, Cascade Fellowship, and they did this amazing thing. They came to us when they are at their healthiest and said, what can we do next? And so important to do that right now, and so thankful that you guys are doing it.
Yeah. So that is your analysis. We're in what's called the adult stage, just still talking big picture here now. And that is a stage in the life of a church when it doesn't require a major overhaul or renovation of just ripping out the bones. But we've got good structure. We've got good bones to work with here. But the task for us is more an ongoing, how would you describe it?
Well, the task is really to say, what do we have? Where's things going well? How do we tweak it? And where might there be some blanks or holes in our systems? And so we talk a little bit about churches need to be inward, upward, and outward. So inward in the congregation of discipleship and care, upward toward God and worship, outward to our community. And we're looking and we're saying the strengths of this church are inward and upward. We're somewhat weak in outward. Not that we don't do a lot of outward things, but we've not figured out how to take those outward things and bridge people back into the life of the congregation and bridge them into a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And so this is an important moment for us to say, we're thankful for inward and upward, but we also know that people out there need Jesus. We also know this community needs to be transformed beyond its wealth and riches and all the influence it has to be part of the kingdom of God. And so this is a moment for us to think about that together.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Well, for those of you watching the video version of this, we'll put on the screen a little diagram that you created for us. And it shows we've got good problems. Churches have problems. They're either good problems or they're bad problems.
Yep.
We've got the good kind, which is nice. We have growth. We have every week 2, 3, 4 new families checking us out. We had a membership class as we're recording this video of 18 adults progressing through membership and all their kids. We just had another class of a similar size not too long ago. So we've got some problems that we're going to talk about in the meat of this video coming up. But those are all what you would somewhat, with some nuance, but you would mainly classify as internal pressure.
Yep.
So we're facing transfer growth as people move to town and they look for a new church, but they're already Christians. We're facing inward pressure from some of our own ministries that, hey, we want to serve our own kids really well. We want to serve ourselves really well. So there's a lot of inward pressure that could, if we let it, just monopolize our entire attention and resources, right? It's like we're facing the good problems that a growing church faces. A congregation that is enthused and caring and invested, and they want to do the things we're about to talk about well. They want to do youth well. They want to do fellowship well. They want to do everything that we do in our ministries well. And that pressure will always be there. So we have to pressure ourselves as leaders intentionally to also feel the pressure to reach out and to minister well to those who don't know Christ yet.
Yeah,
if we don't create that pressure, it's not just going to create itself.
Yeah, because the people aren't out there, right, who don't know Christ yet. They're not coming here and putting pressure on the church and saying, hey, we need you to do this, right? They're out there and they're going along. They're just fine. So the only pressure we really feel internally is from people who are here and pressuring us. And now there may be people in the congregation who feel that pressure of mission, and they'll pressure us in that direction. But usually those voices are not as loud as the pressures to say, how do we do good youth ministries? How do we do good worship? How do we do, right? Those are the strong voices. The missional voices are usually weaker.
Right. And I think one of the most interesting results from our study is that things are basically good here.
They are.
And the train is on the tracks. We're headed in a good direction. And so we could spend 100% of our energy making these little tweaks to make things incrementally better. But really, if you zoom out and see the big picture, things are really good. And so we have some bandwidth, if we choose to use it, to look at these broader issues, to, like we said in some of our meetings, make a dent in the universe. We have, God has stewarded us with all the resources it would take to do some really cool things in advancing the kingdom here on earth. And it would be a shame if we simply just keep making little incremental changes to continue to make little tweaks here and there, when we could be using all that energy and resources and people to really do something amazing for the kingdom.
Well, I think of Proverbs chapter 11. There's just a single verse there, and it says, when the righteous prosper, the city rejoices. And you look at that verse and you say, well, why is the city rejoicing? You would think they'd say, well, why are those people prospering? All that kind of stuff. Well, first of all, the rejoicing is a word that connects to people who have been rescued from a city that thought it was going to fall and people were going to go into slavery. So they're rejoicing because the city has stood, they're not going to be slaves, all those kind of things. So it's that level of rejoicing. And then when the righteous prosper, the righteous are a certain kind of people, and they are the kind of people who say, whatever resources we have, whatever we've got, we will give in order to build the city into a good place, a great place to live.
Yeah.
And so one of the questions we ask in this, right, is not so much how do we build a great city or build a great church, but how do we build a great city? Or in our context, how do we build a great circle of 5 miles?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's go beyond that big picture view now and get right into that vision pyramid. So I mentioned at the beginning of this video that we've laid the foundation. We've talked about the values, the mission, and vision. And through our listening, now we get into our priorities and practices. And you've helped us discern what our priorities might be for the next 6, 12, 18 months. And I was encouraged that through all the different gatherings and all the many people we assembled together, we kept hearing the same things. So it wasn't as if one group was saying one thing and another group was saying another thing. We're all kind of seeing the same reality here. And let's talk about those realities we're seeing. Mm-hmm. So our priorities for the next chapter, season of our church's life here, rising to the very top of the list was youth ministry. So talk to us about why that needs to be a priority.
Well, I think one of the reasons youth ministry needs to be a priority is because we know that most people who become followers of Jesus by the time they hit high school. And so if we create good and strong youth ministries that not only serve our own children, right again, and help them become followers of Jesus, but also serve kids in our community to help them become followers of Jesus, this is a prime time for that to happen. And then the second part of that is with our youth ministries, through high school and even beyond into college, what we want to do is we want to give young people the opportunity to build a strong faith that can withstand questions and wonderings, a faith where they can ask questions and have wonderings as they walk into all these different places of life. And so if we can build strong youth ministries, we'll see more kids stay with the church, and we'll see more kids able to interact with the culture and answer those questions and deal with the questions that are so powerfully put to them at this point.
Yeah. I think what we're seeing at our church is a symptom that is a symptom of a much larger problem nationwide, maybe worldwide, in deconstruction, for one thing, and churches struggling to capture this age group. There's some unique challenges, and COVID really accelerated those challenges. So I know many churches who have struggled to get youth going back like it was pre-COVID. And that's certainly true of our own church. We haven't quite figured it out yet, how to make that program adapt so that it meets the needs of kids today and prepares them for what they're about to face in their next stage of life. So that's one of our priorities, and we've got some good people looking at it, including Larry. And we're in the midst of searching for our next student ministries lead right now. We're using the Slingshot Group as our recruiter, and as part of their contract with us, there we go, they are going to get in the mix and see if the job description is what it needs to be in today's day and age, and if the reporting structure is good, and the whole staffing aspect. So we're going to do that. We've got a group also coming together, a Vision Perspectives group, a group of lay people. The best and the brightest, among the best and the brightest from our own folks who are going to speak into that as well. So that's what youth ministries looks like. It's one of our priorities to invest in and figure out a little bit better. Second on the list is relationships. So we mentioned that church is growing. We have these membership classes all the time that we're having to move to bigger rooms because we never had that many people in one class, and it's a good thing, but the tension is, if our church does grow beyond its current size, are we going to lose that feeling that we are still able to have real relationships here and we can really be known here? So we want to figure that out too. Something really special about our church we don't want to lose as we grow. So maybe you can talk about the priority of relationships.
So I'm a member of Pillar Church, and one of the things we say week by week, it's a place where your name is known and your story is heard and your questions are honored. And the huge part of relationships right now in our culture, as you know, Bill, is that people are lonely. And in our survey that we did, the Mission Insight, the number one thing people were looking for were warm and friendly encounters. And so this whole priority of relationships, both as a means of reaching our community, but also as a means within our own context of helping people form healthy, strong relationships that carry them through so many different parts of life. There's going to be all kinds of things that happen along the way, from illnesses to kids to accidents to celebrations, and to have a community around you that joins in that celebration.
Yeah.
And so as the church gets larger, one of the challenges is to ask, how do we maintain the relational base? How do we make sure people have close connections as well as a number of just kind of loose connections, so that when I'm walking down the hallway on Sunday morning when I'm down grabbing a cookie, I can say, "Oh, hi, Jane, good to see you." And she could say, "Oh, good to see you." We don't have much more than that, but we know each other's name a little bit. And then I have some other folks that I know more intimately. And so the importance of relationships, particularly in the cultural moment we're in, is just absolutely huge. And so it really does need to be a priority, both for the health of the church and for the health of the community around the church.
Yeah. It's one of our strengths currently that we're a very friendly, hospitable church. Still, in our study, we turned up a fair number of people who don't have a close friend here at church and don't have people to talk to about spiritual things in their lives. So it's an ongoing area to look at.
It is. And I think, one of the things we talked about with this is that the number one indicator that somebody will leave a congregation is if they don't have a close friend in the congregation. And so we can't manufacture those things, but we can try to create the atmosphere and the place in which people can create those kind of friendships.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Dunbar's number is really interesting. I think about it a lot. So any given person, the average person, can maybe relate to 150 people at some level, maybe know their name and just a little bit about them. But there's maybe 12 or so people that you can really view as your friends, and maybe a smaller group like 3 or 2 that really you can tell anything to. And, so we like to think that we're a place where you can find everything that we just talked about. You can find your 2 or 3 people to be really best friends with. You can find that tight-knit group of friends to hang out with. And you can be part of this broader community where not everybody, but a lot of people.
Yep.
And they're there to support you in a broader way. And then even beyond the 150 number, the Dunbar's number, the famous number, it just takes a village to raise a kid. It takes a village to exist in Christian values and to be supported. So even though you don't know everybody's name and everybody's story here, it can still be a place where you feel supported and encouraged in the broader Christian community.
Well, in that relationship piece, again, you were just talking about youth, right? And I think it's like 5 good adult relationships per kid keeps that child engaged in the community. And that's not 5, youth leaders or whatever, but it's this child knows 5 people in the congregation who are adults and has some connection with them. And so, again, when it comes to relationships on the youth side, that's so very important to us. And even if it's adults, older adults, who take the time to learn the name of a couple of kids in our congregation and say, on Sunday morning, look for them and just say, "Hi, how are you? I'm Mary Ann. I just want to introduce myself," right? And then just kind of watch a little bit and provide that care. It's not we're asking them to be youth leaders. We're just saying, can you learn a couple kids' names and on Sunday mornings say hi?
Yeah. It's interesting to see how these connect then. Number 1, youth ministry. Number 2, relations. And now number 3 is the facility master plan.
Yes.
So growth, again, being a theme, a good problem to have. But if God continues to bring people our way, which is every indication that he will, and again, by the way, without doing a penny of advertising, without twisting anybody's arm to invite their friends or equip them with a card or anything, people are just so enthused about what's happening here. They are inviting their friends, and people are watching us online, and people are just coming. So what do we do? How do we deal with that growth? Because I, as the pastor, I look out, and on any given Sunday, Even after the kids have been dismissed and leave for their time, I'm looking out and I can barely find 3 seats together in any part of the church. So we're at that point where many churches would say, well, we got to go to multiple services. We fortunately have the lower worship center. We have another venue, so we can do things. We can rearrange the furniture a little bit to fit more people there and do things to make people enjoy going there. But at some point, all these questions come up, like, what do we do? What are our options if people continue to come? And we got to start thinking about those.
We do, and a lot of it flows from our values. So as we've come up with 5 values for Cascade, really that reflect who Cascade is and all those kind of things. And one of the values, it really feels to me, is that the congregation is saying, we don't want to go to multiple services. We want to remain one body. And so multiple services becomes, not the greatest option because people say that kind of goes against our values. And we don't want to break our values, right? And so I look at that and recognizing the challenges that are before us. But one of the things we know is this, that if we let people know, even our visitors know, we know the place is full. We know it's crowded. We want you to know we're all excited to be here. We're excited you're here with us. Thank you for being here. And we are working on it, right? We know this is a problem. We are working on it. That will give people the space in which to say, okay, it's crowded now, but there's hope in the future.
Right. Yeah.
So I would say important for us to just let people know we are working on it and looking towards the future, and then ask ourselves, what are the values that we are holding dear to us that we want to make sure that we live out rather than just diving into a solution to get us some more seats.
Right. And one of our values is reaching out. And through our community survey, we saw that 60% of people within a 5-mile radius do not have a church home. And many people, a high percentage, don't know Christ in a personal way. So how can we, as a church who is doing well and has something that is working in our context, how can we be a good steward of that and help make a dent in that 60% figure? An obvious option is church planting. Are we at a place now with our current attendance level where we could send out 100, 150 people to plant a church? I don't think we're there yet. That's a big hit to take from 450 down to 253. But if we were to find a way to grow to a size of maybe 550 to 600, then that could equip us to plant a church and then grow back and then plant another church and really be good stewards of what we've got here. In order to do that, there's a facilities question, and if you're new to the church, there was a master plan. There was a lot of thought that went into a master plan long before I got here that involved one larger sanctuary. So we're not in 2 different sanctuaries, but there's all of us together and a little bit more room to grow. And that's something the council will be thinking about. Is it time to pull that paperwork out again and finish what we had agreed on starting so long ago? That discussion is in the very preliminary stages, but it's just something to be aware of, and we'll be seeking everybody's input specifically on that at some point. I guess the big take-home thing with the facilities question is we have to do something, or else we default into an option that I do not like and nobody likes. That's just to become a drawbridge church, which is we're all in, we're having a good time, we got a good thing here. We don't have room for anybody else. Drawbridge comes up. Sorry, guys. And if we don't do something, that's what we default to, I think.
Well, and it actually, I think, from my perspective, goes beyond that. You pull up the drawbridge, and there are people who are finding a way to swim the moat to the other side because the place is so crowded that they're saying, there's not a place for me here. There's not a place for my kids here. I've got to find a different spot to go because there just isn't room.
Yeah. So there's a dynamic at which churches are either growing or declining. And if you bump your head too hard against a ceiling of some sort, you'll lose that momentum and you'll start to decline. And I would hate to see our church lose the great momentum we've got and start declining. So for that reason, facility master plan is on the list. It's something we got to think about.
Absolutely.
We've got some really great, very, very talented people at this church thinking about it. Activation is number 4. and that is, how do we call people to step up in giving their lives to this mission before us, especially perhaps with regard to just volunteering their time, the most precious resource we have, toward volunteering. It's a challenge that all churches are facing right now. So tell us about this priority.
Yeah, and you're right. All churches are facing this. I'm all over the place in lots of different congregations and different classes, and that's something I hear over and over again. People are saying, where do we find the people who want to join the mission, participate in the mission, give their time to the mission? And it is one of the hardest nuts to crack for churches. And I think, most of us are discovering that a couple of things fit into this. So going back to earlier, one is relationship. That when ministries are relational and connected, so if a person's part of a team or something like that, that they're part of a relationship in that team, that draws them in. So if people are looking for a relationship, that you open that up and make sure that it's not just a task to be done, but a relationship that can be built. The second thing we know is that it's great to put announcements out, to give people some information and so on, but really it often comes down to the ask. So you've got to make that direct call. You've got to make that connection with that person and ask for them to participate. And I have that with my own work that I do. I mean, I connect with churches personally and have conversations with them often and send them resources and all those kind of things, because when people know who you are and connect with you, they're more likely to say, I'm really interested. The third thing really, though, is that what we're saying to people is, we're asking you to join the mission of God. And we're asking you to make influence on the lives of people and, give them a taste of the kingdom. And so part of it for us is to be able to paint the picture for people, to be able to say, this is the place to be. There's no better place to be if you actually want to make a dent in the universe.
Cool. Yeah.
So
that's an ongoing challenge, and related to it is number 5, and that is systems capacity, which is, we got a lot going on here. And are we doing the right things? They're all good things, but there's just the question. It's not necessarily a yes or no answer that we've discerned, but just it's worth asking. Are we doing more than our resources would allow us to do well? And are we doing the right things? Good question to ask, right?
It's a good question to ask, and part of the reason we have a vision and a mission is to help us answer those questions. Not only to say, well, do we have capacity to do something, but does it help us actually welcome people, equip people, inspire people? If it's not welcoming, if it's not equipping, and it's not inspiring, then we stop and say, well, maybe that's something we shouldn't be doing. Or if we look and we say, well, it kind of welcomes, inspires a little bit, but there's this other thing, if we did that, it would really welcome, equip, and inspire.
Yeah.
Then we stop and say, well, then let's put our time and our energy over there. At the same time, we want to take a look and ask the question of, so what are we asking of the members of our congregation? How much time does it take for us to put all these pieces together? Is it reasonable? And it doesn't always have to be reasonable. We're on the mission of God. Sometimes God's mission isn't reasonable at some level, but we want to at least look at those questions. And that's something we're going to be doing over the next few months, asking those questions, and also asking the question of, what is it we're doing that really does welcome, equip, and inspire? And what are the things that we might be able to say no to so we can do other things better?
Yeah, and to bring that balance of inward, upward, and outward.
Yeah.
If we've got just a ton of inward-facing ministries that are on parallel paths to accomplish the same thing, and if they require a lot of volunteers, a lot of staff hours, a lot of money, would it be better to allocate some of that toward outward? Or, as we've discussed, can we at least bring some outward focus into the ministries we're currently doing?
Yes.
So it may be not a hard turn where we whip around a curve so fast we lose people, but it's just a gentle reorientation to, here's a ministry that's already thriving and doing well, and we can incorporate into it some of these other things to bring balance.
Yeah, you think about that even in terms of, worship, for instance. You say, so as we look at our worship, how does our worship find itself open and welcoming to people who don't know Christ. How do we imagine the songs that we sing, the messages that we give, all those kind of things? We just take a step back and we say, it's going really well. People love Bill's preaching. They do. It's all across all the good stuff we've got. They love the preaching. They love what's going on. And then we say, so is there any way that we can tweak that a little bit so that people coming from the outside would say, they expected me to be here? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, the hospitality has been waiting. And they walk in and they say, there's the hospitality. I feel it because they put the service together in a way that tells me I'm welcome.
Yeah. Well, we're running close to our time here. I know you've been very generous with your time and have to head out to all the other great things you've got going on. But let's talk about the last piece in the pyramid, which is that very top little piece, and that is practices. So we have our mission and vision, which is like the destination, and how do we get from here to there? At this church in particular, we're blessed with a staff, very talented staff, and we've given them some degree of flexibility to say, like, okay, now you know where we're headed. Be nimble, be strategic, be adaptable, and find the best way there that works the best. That's our approach kind of in a nutshell, but we're not leaning just on staff members. We have some very talented lay people here as well, and so we're assembling these vision perspectives teams for a short period of time just to help our staff brainstorm, to see the picture even more clearly, to discern what works, what doesn't work. That, in a nutshell, I think is how we're going to take some next steps. You want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I love the idea of bringing in perspectives from the congregation. And again, the staff is the group of people that are designed, if you will, to administer so people can minister. And so we ask the staff to put the administrative pieces in place and make sure everything's running so that people are freed up to minister. Or in this case, they're freed up to brainstorm and to think. They don't have to worry about, is this box checked, or is this kid going to be at the nursery, or all those kind of. The staff takes care of those details. So people can step up to the plate and say, so let me think about that with you. Let me imagine that with you. And so I love this idea of opening that door, giving input, and then the staff saying, thank you very much for that input. Now this is how we're going to take steps forward to make these pieces of our vision a reality, boots on the ground, real stuff, not just the words that are up in the cloud.
Yeah. So that, in a nutshell, is where we're headed. Like I said, there's more parts in this series yet to come, including a really intriguing look at the data we uncovered from the community survey, Mission Insight, and really unpacking the congregational survey as well. So again, we're going to kind of show our work for how we ended up where we ended up in the videos still to come. But for today, thank you again, Larry.
Thank you for having me.
It's been so great to have you as a consultant and now as a podcast guest as well.
All right.
So,
good to be here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.